All right, all right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. This is a little conversation on the creator economy infrastructure. Really excited to have this group of panelists here. We're going to have a nice open conversation. There's some really incredible projects being built by all these lovely people on stage with me. So we'll just start off with some quick introductions. My name's Alec. I'm an artist. I'm also working on building creator tooling for revenue sharing, and also run an artist collective called Campfire with some other folks in the room. So we'll just go right to left here. Sure. Quick introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name's Adrien Stern. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Reveel. We are building an on-chain earning infrastructure for creators and businesses, basically revenue sharing and making sure creators can access their funds more easily. I started my career in the music industry. I played in a Swiss reggae band that started touring internationally, started managing the band, started producing other artists. Eventually ran an independent record label, so did that for about 10 years. After which, did a 180, came to the US and worked in banking for a couple of years. That's when I learned about blockchain. And after 3 years of being sick of working in that environment, went back to school and started ideating on different things. Eventually landed on what is Reveel today, where I'm kind of bringing my past experience as a creator and working in banking to try to help creators better manage their on-chain earnings.
Hello, Adrien. Hi, guys. My name is Nikki Bean. I am the head of community at Decent.xyz. We are a Web3 infrastructure and tooling company helping creators, brands, organizations really integrate NFTs and their technology into their day-to-day operations. I've been in Web3 for about a year and a half now, really on the community building side, working with independent creators to really help them take control of their experience in their careers, whether it be inside or outside of Web3. I'm just really passionate about helping the independent people succeed, and so I'm really stoked to be here with this amazing group of people who are also on that wave as well.
GM, everyone. I am LDF. I am sometimes what people would call, I guess, a creator. I see it more as being like a chaotic person of the internet. In my past life, I had roles at Reddit and Facebook, specifically working with gaming, e-commerce, and crypto companies that were building communities. And I was really fascinated in what individual creators were able to do outside of any one platform by building communities and being kind of like a headless brand themselves that could take a lot of different forms. And so to me, that was what made crypto and some of these primitives super interesting, and being able to own and control more than just financial information. And so being able to build experiences on top of those transactions was very interesting to me. And so I decided I couldn't participate in building tooling unless I just decided to do the work myself, run into the problems that individuals were facing. And there are a lot of them. We have a lot of work to do. So really excited about the conversations that have been happening this week, the people that are putting in the work on the tooling to make this easier for more creative people to be able to build really awesome experiences that are going to make this industry more approachable and more exciting for more people. So really excited to be here today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bradley Freeman. I'm on the growth team at Lens Protocol, which is part of the Aave companies. Lens focuses on giving creators ownership of their relationship with their followers, all of the content that they create, and the data, having full visibility into the data that you generate. My background is I previously worked at TikTok, where that was sort of my entry into Web3. I helped create TikTok's NFT project, which was all around helping creators understand the value of the content that they create and build direct relationships with their fans. And Lens is really like the grown-up version of that, so super excited to be here with all these guys.
Awesome. Thank you all for the intros. There are so many, we don't have a ton of time. We have about 20 minutes here, and there's a lot of different directions that the conversation could go. I'd like to do just a little bit of context setting kind of before we start, though. If anybody has kind of an operative definition of the creator economy, like as you understand it, would love for anyone to kind of share. Yeah, no pressure, by the way. It doesn't need to be a dictionary definition, but.
Yeah. The creator economy, to me, or the promise of the creator economy, is the idea that you can have a career and a livelihood through your creative passions. There's this, I think most of us grew up with the idea that you can either be a starving artist or get a corporate job and be unhappy and make money. And that really shouldn't be the choice. And the promise of the creator economy is to achieve the best of both worlds. I think all the projects that we're all working on and the folks we work with we share this mission on some level.
Awesome, thank you. Would anyone else like to share anything else as you kind of think about it?
I think Brad covered it. That's perfect.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so a couple things that come to mind with that definition in mind or that promise in mind are as participants in the creator economy, how are our contributions compensated and how are they recognized, right? I think those are the kind of two key elements. So, Adrien, I'm going to direct this first question, I guess, at you because what Reveel is building is kind of handling that first part of how are the contributions actually compensated. What do you see as the kind of key unlocks of blockchain and Web3 in general for new methods of, compensation for independent creators?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the really interesting things that blockchain is enabling is kind of a transition from, upfront flat fees being paid to some creators to participation or equity, if you will, into the upside of a project, right? When you think about the music industry, for instance, the graphic designer that would draw the cover art of an album would be paid, $500, maybe $2,000 if they're really a great artist, and that's it, right? Flat fee, upfront, you're done with your work. In the Web3 space, what we're seeing is that creators, different collaborators, get a percentage of the revenue generated by the project. Obviously, higher risk, but more upside. And I feel like we're seeing this transition to more equity into how creators collaborate. And so the not only is it kind of a more collaborative space because of the equity that everyone has, but we're bringing in new types of collaborators, right? In, let's say in a PFP project, you might have developers, you might have marketers, you've got designers, you've got all these different folks collaborating on a project and have, a share of earnings. So we're really excited about that at Reveel because we feel like it's enabling a fairer, creator economy for all the different collaborators and more upside for all of them. And we're giving them the tools, or at least we're trying to build the tools for them to be able to share that revenue in a trustless way without having to rely on middlemen. And I think this is the second part of my answer to your question, which is the big shift, is that now creators can own the way they want their earnings to be redistributed, right? In music, in film, you have a lot of intermediaries who will usually collect the royalties of these different types of assets and somehow redistribute those funds back to creators. Often that's done in a black box. Well, now on chain, you can have these revenue share agreements, executed in a trustless way. So there's a lot more transparency and a lot more efficiency in terms of redistributing the funds back to creators. But also the creators can actually own the smart contracts that are executing that redistribution, right? So overall, more power to creators, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. I think anyone in the room who's hip to the music industry specifically, it takes a long time for payouts to actually happen, and when they do ultimately happen, it's there's not a level of transparency as to how much each entity is getting paid and why, and who decided why. So it's definitely a great opportunity for transparency and equity.
Yeah, I'll just add a quick little story, but I wrote a song for a Chilean artist and made it on his album. It took 18 to 24 months for me to be paid out my royalties. In no other industry is anyone willing to do work and be paid out 2 years later. But in the creator economy, and specifically in music, that's everyday life for musicians. And I feel like Web3 is enabling a different way of executing those payments, which is much more efficient.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a high degree of control in Web3 relative to the way things have been done before, right? And how funds are actually distributed and shared. But also, there's a high degree of control and customizability of how are you actually releasing your work? How are you designing your releases? And I think that's where Decent is really interesting. You guys have a whole suite of different tools and different avenues that creators can take to different standards that creators can use across different chains as well, right, to release their work. So I'm curious, Nikki, what you see as the kind of like the key unlocks of the creator economy, and specifically like Decent.
Yeah, so there's like no real like answer, like what is the key to releasing, as a creator. And the beautiful thing about Web3 and like the tooling that across all of these different companies that are being represented up here, and specifically Decent, is that we're trying to give you all the option to figure out how you want to do it. And so there's a couple different ways that at least Decent is specifically trying to help give creators the ability to try out all these different tools and different approaches to doing so. First being multi-chain. There's a lot more than Ethereum out there, and I think that all these L2 chains like Polygon, which Lens is building on, Optimism, Arbitrum, all of those, it's key to use those to experiment, to figure out what works at a lower cost, lower gas. Also, just different ways of releasing your NFTs as well too. There's what we know and love, and music NFTs specifically is a fixed edition drop, sell out. But there's also ways where you can price your NFTs on a bonding curve. You can do it non-financial NFTs, and ways to build up your brand and community awareness. Like Lens does, and we work with a lot with Lens as well too. Just different ways that you can approach how and customize how you want to be a creator in this on-chain world that we know. And so the way that I would approach releasing would be different than Adrien, different than LDF, and different than Bradley. And that's the cool thing about what we're doing, is we're giving you the option and not telling you how to do it, which I think is great.
Yeah, for sure. I love like open protocols and like the ethos of Web3 of like, here's all these different Legos, and like the ones that you decide to kind of stack in order to achieve what it is that you want to do. It's kind of up to the creator to do that. Something I find super fascinating about Decent is the rentables, which is a brand new thing, by the way, for anyone who hasn't heard. I'd be curious if you could just give a quick overview of that, just in case anyone hasn't heard, because I think that's a really interesting.
Oh, my favorite topic ever.
Yes.
Yeah, so Decent's rentables are based off the ERC 4907s, and basically we're really excited about this new wave of just giving new life to NFTs in a way that's not just like them as the end goal. And so with rentables, you're able to lease out your NFT for a determined amount of time by you to a renter to have that as like in their, like as a user, in order for them to, for token gating, for subscriptions, to, really just anything across the board. We're seeing it like a restaurant reservation. Like the possibilities are literally endless in terms of how you can tap into this technology. And so we're really stoked to see like how these use cases are being brought into it, whether it's, Alec as an artist bringing in, like try before you buy into his community to see what's it like to be part of Alec's artist experience, or, just the world is like pretty endless when it comes to rentables. And so I'm really excited to see how creators and, organizations just continue to tap into those.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. Like, it's kind of obvious, right, that the creators themselves can monetize how they want to, but I think it's a really interesting line of thought. Like, as the collectors and the curators as well, you have opportunities to monetize the things that you've collected, and yeah, there's just a lot of possibilities that introduces. That we'll see how things go over the next few years, but curious to hear your perspective, Bradley, on this, just because I think that Lens also has, built in the curator experience is very much part of how you're thinking about things, as I understand it. So I'm curious, like, if you could speak to the design of Lens and like kind of Web3 social more broadly, the role of not only like the creators themselves, like the artists, but also the curators, the folks who are, helping, in their own way to build these platforms and build these ecosystems.
Totally. So for those who don't know, on Lens, if I make a post that I say can be collected as an NFT, and I'll say I'll charge $1 per post, and then LDF here can share it like a retweet, I can specify, let's say, a 20% referral fee. So if she shares it, and then Nikki collects it because of LDF's share, which we can actually see because it's a chain of logic on, like, it's visible, LDF gets 20%, or 20 cents on the dollar of every sale attributable to her. And that means, while it's cool, the idea that you can retire perhaps on generating income from sharing content, what's even cooler to us is the idea that you can there's a new status associated with being a curator. So we measure creators in terms of how many likes do you get, how many followers do you have, how many streams do you get. But it's a totally different thing to say, I drive 20% of so-and-so's revenue, or I'm responsible or attributable for 50% of someone's followers. And speaking to this, There are 360 creators or users on Lens who have successfully shared a post that got collected because of their share, and the average revenue for those users is $25.
Nice.
And so there are creators or your users, curators on Lens who are out earning creators on TikTok who get millions and millions of views and have really no monetization to show for it. So we really do think of curators as a class of their own that have a relationship with creators and also with collectors as well. And by the way, you're not one of these. Everyone is all of these. It depends on the context. So when I'm posting my TikToks that no one watches to LensTube, I'm a creator. But when I'm on Lenster and I'm sharing posts that I think are interesting, like from Alec especially, I'm playing the role of a curator. And then when I'm on Beats, which is a music app on Lens, and I'm collecting music, I'm playing the role of a collector. So everyone is all of these in different contexts.
Love that, love that. I think that gets to another really interesting point, right? It's not just like the YouTuber or the Twitch streamer who has 100,000 followers who's participating in this economy. It's increasingly all of us, especially as the incentives kind of expand to include more folks for different types of activities. And this is where I think Disco is especially interesting, where it's like, again, it's not just like the mega influencers, it's everybody. All of our data is valuable, and the space, the ecosystem at large is stronger and more sustainable if individuals have control over their data and their identity, right? So I'm curious, LDF, we could go, I also want to talk about your video content because I feel like you're doing something lately that is like really nostalgic for me in a way that I can't explain as an individual creator. But first, I'm just curious to hear your perspective on Disco, on on-chain identity, how this kind of enables the creator economy, and then if you also want to speak to your personal stuff.
Well, we have 6 minutes, so I'm very aware of that right now. But one of the things I wanted to touch on, just given, again, my background coming from like traditional social media, one of the things that bothered me the most was this classification inside some of the traditional platforms of a creator that was very different than a user, and how those groups were treated extremely differently. And to your definition of kind of the creator economy, enabling individuals to make a living from the value that they're driving through these platforms, one of the things that never made sense to me was the fact that creators were really just power users of these products who had found a way to monetize that value in other ways that were outside the ecosystem themselves. And so to me, the promise of kind of Web3 social is this idea of changing the definition of what a creator is to being a participant in the ecosystem. And as you gave a bunch of really great examples, allowing people to help capture that value as they're creating it. Because even though we're used to describing a creator as someone who maybe is posting content and getting a lot of views or driving a bunch of traffic, actually, a lot of really valuable interactions are happening in the comments of these videos that are building around the inspiration that they found from the individual that started something for them. And so actually, it was funny, when I got into the Web3 space, I got back on Twitter for the first time in 10 years. And I was so excited about the idea of having more dialogue that was back and forth, where I would see someone post a thought starter that was a half-baked idea that people all of a sudden rallied around, made real, and now because they could mint an NFT, because they could, get a quick signal from the market that said there is value here and we're willing to show you that maybe you should continue pursuing this. You don't need to leave your job and bank on the fact that you're going to get sponsorships because you've built up this major audience. And so allowing a lot more people to see themselves as creators and to try a bunch more things before they find what might be monetarily valuable to someone else, but might have social value for them, that might introduce them to people that they otherwise wouldn't have met, has opened the doors for, honestly, a lot of product feedback that's super valuable for these platforms to say, we don't have to go convince a venture capitalist that we're going to rebuild Twitter because Twitter is valuable. I actually watched a ton of web, like 2.5, I guess you could call them, platforms really struggle to raise money because venture capitalists didn't understand how they would monetize with the same models that would compete against an Instagram or a YouTube, but they weren't using blockchain as a crutch either, where they actually had new features that were something they were frustrated with that didn't exist inside existing platforms. And so as individuals are doing more and more of that work by existing across these different spaces on the internet, allowing them to take that information with them to different contexts so that they're not locked into, getting stuck somewhere that they did find traction. I might post videos on Twitter that do well, but then a new application comes out. I don't want to have to choose between starting over or, relying on the fact that there was value there. So just making it additive behind a person instead of attributing all that value to where it happened in the first place is something that is another big promise of social. And in my opinion, and in Disco's opinion, there is a lot more data that might not need to exist on a blockchain that still needs to have that same portability. And so things like, my preferences for dark mode or light mode, or my gender and age, and information that doesn't need to be publicly available and posted on a blockchain can still have those same properties. So yeah, just giving more optionality to individuals to make things happen with each other, and then figure out what tooling needs to get built around that to make it easier for other people to do the same thing is really, really cool to watch.
To your last point, right? We only have a couple minutes left here, but one of the last things you said was like the tooling that needs to exist in order for this stuff to be possible. I'm curious to just use these last couple minutes, because the topic here is infrastructure. Do you guys see any obvious missing pieces of infrastructure? What are the missing pieces? Is it just time and like the time for the protocols that we're all working on to mature, for more folks to come in and experiment, or are there any kind of big gaps in terms of infrastructure that anyone's seeing?
I have one. All the data on Lens and on a lot of other applications is on chain, but just because it's on chain doesn't mean it's understandable or useful. We are seeing like when a new Dune dashboard comes out around like your followers, and it just shows you what number of followers someone was and when they followed you. That's great. There are like 240 different dashboards that have little bits and pieces of data about like your Lens engagement. And if I need to answer one question of who's collected more than 3 of my posts and who else do they follow, and I have to go check 5 different sources to try and answer that and still maybe not be able to, that's a huge problem. So I'm really excited to see more like data analytics and visualization tools. There's one I'll shout out, Bello, that Adam Levy from the Mint podcast has created, which is awesome.
We love Bello.
Yeah, but that is definitely the data analytics, make it useful to creators now that it is on-chain and accessible, is number one in my book for sure.
I was going to say more super users. I think we're starting to get to a point where people are getting familiar with maybe one product or one kind of suite of products and starting to find success, which is amazing. We need case studies. I want to see more people putting more of the Lego blocks together to say, how do we show creators that aren't using these tools right now what was never possible before, and getting outside of maybe even what exists, but what they want to see exist by breaking things, by putting them together, by making those more packaged and more seamless. And then the analytics to back that up I want to see more of it.
Well, we have 30 seconds. This is a call to action. These are 4 really great Legos up here between Reveel, Decent, Disco, and Lens for anyone who's interested to use. And you were going to say something. You got 30 seconds.
20 seconds.
I'll just say, I think, what a lot of us are looking to do is also simplify access to on-chain tools and make these tools simpler, because that's what's going to help onboard the next wave of millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of creators, and eventually their fans. And so, I think that's part of our mission at Reveel, making access to on-chain earnings as simple as possible, and we're always happy to collaborate with anyone who follows that mission.
Awesome. Well, I think we're at time. I don't know if we have time to take questions. We do not. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Encourage everybody to tap in with these folks. Here's to the creator economy.